Welcome to Lumos Maxima, the Rolling Library podcast. My name is Demi Schwartz, a Hufflepuff.
My name is Jessica Minetti, a Ravenclaw. It's time to turn on the light because Hogwarts is about to welcome you home. Hey everybody, welcome back to another new episode of Lumos Maxima. If you haven't followed us on social, what are you waiting for? Please do it. Please say hello. We would love to hear from you. Our social handles are at Lumos Maxima Cast on Twitter and Instagram, and our Facebook page is Lumos Maxima, the Rolling Library Podcast.
We also have a YouTube channel, which is Lumos Maxima, the Rolling Library Podcast, where we post bloopers and other fun bonus content. So be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. We also have a voicemail line, so hit us up at 412-228-5435. And let us know your thoughts about the podcast. We will feature your message in an upcoming episode. And now for our topic announcement. Drum roll, please. The topic is Draco Malfoy, and this is an extra special one because it is Draco's birthday. And we have a very special guest with us, my friend Anissa. Say hello to everybody and tell them your Wizarding World profile.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Anissa. My house, I am a Gryffindor. My wand is a hornbeam wood with a dragon heartstring core. It's 9 3/4 inches long. My Patronus is a dolphin. My favorite character is Hermione Granger. My favorite book is The Order of the Phoenix. And my favorite Hogwarts class would be Charms.
Thank you for introducing yourself. Anissa is going to come back later in this episode to dive into Draco's character with us. But right now, let's get into our quote.
It's time for Quick Quotes Corner.
The quote I picked for Draco comes from chapter 24 of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, called Sectum Sempra. "No one can help me," said Malfoy. His whole body was shaking. "I can't do it. I can't. It won't work. And unless I do it soon, he says he'll kill me." And Harry realized with a shock so huge it seemed to root him to the spot that Malfoy was crying, actually crying, tears streaming down his pale face into the grimy basin. Half-Blood Prince as a whole is a huge turning point for Draco. After he's put to the task to kill Dumbledore, he takes it on with a sense of purpose. With Lucius in Azkaban and Narcissa afraid, Draco kind of believes that this task and completing it will help him restore his family's reputation, but he finds out very quickly that Voldemort never intended him to succeed. He realizes that his chances of success are slim to none, and this is the first time where he really starts to crack under the weight of the terror and pressure. So throughout this book, Draco's finally getting a taste of what it's like to truly actively bow to Voldemort and be a disposable servant to him. From this point forward, he still has his flaws, it's true, but Draco's starting to question the things that he was taught to believe because of the way that Lucius and Narcissa raised him.
Malfoy is finally getting the chance to be like his father for the first time, and to be like his father is to do evil. Malfoy doesn't know or believe he's up to the task. He idolizes people, like his father, and he's able to insult people like Dumbledore, but when put to the test, he cracks. This just shows that Draco is only a 16-year-old boy. He doesn't know what good or evil means. He doesn't even know if he can pick a side. And that's something that I think we all struggle with. The sides of good and evil are not just black and white, and there's definitely a gray area in some instances. Malfoy sees this gray area because he sees how killing Dumbledore will help his family, which I guess is good that it helps his family, but it's also evil in a sense that he's committing murder, something that he didn't think he would have to do at 16 years old. Oh look! I think Polly's coming with some wizarding news.
Hey, it's Polly, our owl. She's bringing us the wizarding news in the Muggle world.
Hey guys, it's time for wizarding news in the Muggle world. First, we're going to talk about Sorcerer's Stone Harry Potter at Home reading. In our last episode, we mentioned that as part of Harry Potter at Home, all 17 chapters of Sorcerer's Stone will be read by Wizarding World favorites and beyond. Chapters 7 and 8 are out now. Olivia Colman, with Jonathan Van Ness and Kate McKinnon, reads Chapter 7, The Sorting Hat. Recently, Alia Bat, with Alec Baldwin and his daughter, read Chapter 8, The Potions Master. Wizarding World announced you can watch videos of the chapters being read, and thanks to Spotify, the audio can be streamed on that platform. Harry Potter at Home readings. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's/Sorcerer's Stone by the Wizarding World podcast on Spotify. Next, we have a special piece of news for our Chinese listeners. It is called First Look at Harry Potter Magic Awakened, revealed in China. NetEase Incorporated is one of the largest internet and video game companies in the world. Together with Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment, they created a Wizarding World mobile game called Harry Potter Magic Awakened. At NetEase's 6th annual product launch 520 conference, the company showed video highlights of the game alongside a live orchestra performance of John Williams' Hedwig's theme. Harry Potter Magic Awakened is officially licensed by Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment. It will be launched under the Portkey Games label and will be available to Harry Potter fans in China. Harry Potter Magic Awakened focuses on collectible cards and features strategy roleplay elements. The game is set some years after the Second Wizarding War. As part of their wizarding journey, players can work to master spells, recruit allies, and construct strategies and magical combinations for player versus player combat. For more information, go to www.harrypottermagicawakened.com.
It is time for Draco Malfoy news. So I want to first start off by talking about his name. Draco is of Greek origin, which means dragon. Dragons are fierce creatures, but they're also very protective of their families. His last name, Malfoy, is super interesting. So Mal derives from Old French, which means bad or evil, and Foy means faith or trust. Many of the characters in the Harry Potter series get their names from constellations, and Draco is one of them. The Draco constellation lies in the northern sky and is one of the largest constellations. It's one of the constellations that was first cataloged by Greek-Egyptian astronomer Ptolemy in the 2nd century CE. Draco is linked to Greek mythology and is most frequently associated with the myth about the 12 labors of Heracles. Draco, meaning the dragon, represents Ladon, who is the dragon that guards the golden apple tree in the Garden of the Hesperides. When Hera married Zeus, she was given the golden apple tree by Gaia as a gift. Hera planted the golden apple tree in the Garden of the Hesperides and gave Atlas's daughters, the Hesperides, the task to guard the golden apple tree. She also placed Ladon there as well, so the Hesperides didn't pick any of the golden apples. In one version of the myth about the 12 labors of Heracles, Heracles was asked to steal 3 of the golden apples. When he got to the Garden of the Hesperides, he killed Ladon with one of his poison arrows. Hera, to reward the dragon for its faithfulness, placed its image into the sky, and this is the Draco constellation. So I thought all of that was super fascinating. Now let's get into a profile about Draco. So Draco was born on June 5th, 1980. He grew up in Malfoy Manor in Wiltshire, which is a magnificent mansion that has been in the Malfoy family for centuries. Draco learned at a young age that he was special because he is a pureblood, a wizard, and a member of the Malfoy family. His parents are Lucius and Narcissa Malfoy. Draco has a pale, pointed face and white blonde hair. His wand is of hawthorn wood with a unicorn hair core and is 10 inches long. He also became the master of the Elder Wand when he disarmed Dumbledore on the astronomy tower, though Draco doesn't know this. Draco also owns an eagle owl that brings him sweets and other gifts from home while he is at Hogwarts. Like the rest of his family, Draco is a Slytherin, and he is in Harry's year at Hogwarts. In his second year, Draco becomes the Seeker on the Slytherin Quidditch team. In his 5th year, he becomes a Slytherin prefect, and he is also a member of Professor Umbridge's Inquisitorial Squad. Draco also gets mixed up with the Death Eaters in his later teen years, though being in the shoes of the Death Eaters makes him question what his family stands for. Draco married Astoria Greengrass, who is the younger sister of a fellow Slytherin, and they have a son together named Scorpius. Next, I have a quote from J.K. Rowling that I think is super insightful about Draco's character. She says, "I pity Draco, just as I feel sorry for Dudley. Being raised by either the Malfoys or the Dursleys would be a very damaging experience. And Draco undergoes dreadful trials as a direct result of his family's misguided principles." So we all know that Tom Felton plays Draco Malfoy in the movies. Though Draco is a Slytherin, Tom is a Gryffindor, and he is one of the sweetest guys ever. When I met him a few years ago, it was very clear that Harry Potter holds a special place in his heart, and he also has a lot of insightful things to say about his character. In an interview he did with 17 in 2011, he was asked what he would miss most about playing Draco, and this is what he said. "He's a sweetheart. Everyone's like, oh, he's horrible, but I feel really sorry for him. Harry has it easy. He has all these great influences saying, do this, do that, be the hero. And Draco doesn't even have that option. It's go and be evil or Voldemort is going to kill you, and that's pretty horrific, really." But as much as he is a sweetheart, Draco is delightfully horrible most of the times, and I've had a lot of joy in doing that. I think what Tom said is very important because aside from J.K. Rowling, he's the one who knows Draco's character the best after playing him in the movies. And I love how he pointed out in this quote that Draco does have layers. He's a complex character and there's a lot more to him than what you see on the outside. And I love that so much. And this is a perfect way to lead us into our discussion on Draco Malfoy with our guest, Anissa.
Now, it's time to dive into the book topic of the week for Tales of Magic and Mischief.
All right, so we are going to start off with the Sorcerer's Stone. And Draco Malfoy, although he has a small role to play in that book by itself, it kind of gives us an idea of what his character is going to be like. So we first meet him when Harry's going to get his robes, and he's a little bit of a jerk. And he starts dropping the my father. He was rude about being pureblood. And he was talking about how everybody in his family had been in Slytherin. And that, I think, is a really important point there that I think maybe we should discuss a little bit, that every single person in his family has been in Slytherin.
Yeah, that just really shows their pureblood status and their kind of mindset that purebloods are superior, because that is something that is at the heart of Slytherin. And so learning right off the bat, before Harry even knows what the houses are, Draco is being okay, yeah, I want to be in Slytherin. And we don't know really about Slytherin yet, but this is a nice foreshadow into when he gets sorted.
Yeah, and it also comes to pass that we learn, obviously, that all the Death Eaters and Voldemort himself are from Slytherin. So he wants to be in it, and maybe he doesn't know all about his father's evil doing, right? But he just knows that it's drilled into him from a young age that this is where the purebloods are. This is where they have to be. And so anything else would be just a disgrace if he didn't get into Slytherin. So the pressure is already on for him. If he doesn't get in, he's going to hear it from his father.
Yeah, I agree too. And I think that this kind of sets the scene for how he was kind of brainwashed into believing these things that maybe if he hadn't grown up in the family that he did, he might not have turned out the way he did. And this is just a big foreshadowing, in my opinion, as to maybe what he might become down the road. And how he values the status that comes with being a Slytherin and a Malfoy more than he values being a person that's good and cares about other people,
Power and status are everything to him, even from a young age. Whereas with Harry, if we go and compare it to him, he has status because of surviving Lord Voldemort and everything, and he has fame, and he could have power if he wanted to, but he wasn't drilled into wanting those things like Malfoy was.
So Draco, in his quest for clout, goes and searches for Harry Potter on the train, on the Hogwarts Express. He finally finds Harry Potter, introduces himself, and then starts absolutely trashing the Weasleys and talks about how some wizards are better than others and that Harry should not be friends with the Weasleys or Ron or anybody like that because he's the wrong sort. And Harry absolutely flames Draco by saying, I can tell who the wrong sort are for myself, thanks. And I think that's kind of where their little rivalry started. I think Harry was sassy Harry to Draco at that point in time, and Draco was not having it.
He is so drilled into thinking that the right sort of purebloods that he doesn't look at first at people's character, right? Because Ron is, in my opinion, the right sort because he has a good character. He has a good heart. He's honest. He's kind. And Draco's like, well, if you're not, as awesome as my father and as rich as my father, then you're nothing to me, even though Ron is a pureblood.
And the fact that he is just as mean to the Weasleys as he is to the Muggleborns and, half-bloods or whatever, the fact that he's just as mean to them shows that, it's really not about the pure blood. It's about having the right ideas and, blending in with the crowd, in my opinion. So then the next time that we see Draco, the book, quote, says, the hat had barely touched his head when it screamed Slytherin. We all know that that's where he belongs and where he's meant to be, and it's a family legacy, and the hat knew it the second it touched his head. So the next time we see Draco, he's stolen Neville's Remembrall. Thankfully, McGonagall, yells at him, which, good for her. But then, at the flying lesson, he steals it again. And he and Harry start chasing each other around the entire grounds with this Remembrall. And finally, Harry ends up catching it, and not to diss Draco or anything, but Harry was then drafted onto the Quidditch team as the Seeker, and Draco got nothing. But he was being so mean and thought it was cool to, bully Neville. For why? Why? For what reason?
Okay, so Neville is my favorite character, as everybody who has listened to a single episode of this podcast knows. And I truly do not understand why he's such a target. Neville is a pureblood too, and this goes back to what we were talking about with Ron. Draco is literally targeting two fellow purebloods just because they're not as rich or not as, up in the, levels of respect or whatever. But I'm so happy Harry made it onto the Quidditch team, because that's like a slap in the face to Draco. You shouldn't have done that. And you just scored Harry a place on the Quidditch team. But the way he treated Neville is just, I can't forgive it.
Well, it's also kind of is similar to how Lucius treats other people who he thinks are below him. So if someone looks weak, his father will treat them bad. Think of Dobby, for example.
Hello?
His father treated Dobby like crap, basically. And, Dobby is weak, and he's submissive, so, Lucius treats him that way. And here's Neville, right? He's weak, he looks like a target. I'm not saying he should be a target, but he seems to look like one, and so Draco takes advantage of it. He goes, oh, this kid's not going to fight back. I don't know. It's kind of emulates father like son.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
Yeah, I agree with that too. That was, I like the connection to Dobby there, because Neville does cry a lot and he is kind of sad. So I think it would give Malfoy reason to bully him more because he likes to see people miserable, like his dad. All right. So then Draco finds out about Hagrid's dragon. And he tries to get Hagrid and Harry, Ron, and Hermione in trouble, which then totally backfires on him because snitches get stitches. Harry, Hermione, Draco, and Neville get detention and have to go into the Forbidden Forest with Hagrid. And Draco is so scared he almost pees his pants. Hagrid pairs him up with Neville at first, and of course, Draco has to go and scare Neville. Poor kid. So then, Hagrid pairs him up with Harry. And when Harry and Draco are paired up, they're walking through the forest and they come across what we all know to be Voldemort, this shadowy creature hunched over a dying unicorn drinking its blood. And Draco, the scaredy cat that he is, tough guy act completely dropped, decides to just run away and leave Harry to deal with it. First of all, once again, picking on Neville. Second of all, he's not as tough as we all think he is, right?
Like, he is such a chicken. Like honestly, the kid thinks he's all that in a bag of chips, which is one of my favorite sayings, by the way. But he really isn't, especially in the first book, which I find hysterical. He's like, oh no, danger! Oh, okay, bye.
Peace. I'm out. We'll start off with the Chamber of Secrets when Harry fails at using the flu network.
Fails at using the flu. What's the flu?
Oh
my god.
Literally dead.
So he fails at using the flu network with his flu powder. And he leaves the burrow and he sneezes and he ends up getting out in Nocturne Alley, which is the wrong kind of alleyway to be caught in. And of course, he's in a shop called Borgin and Burke's, which we will learn about later in the book, of course. And Draco and his dad walk in. And Harry thinks this is quite suspicious. Lucius and Draco start talking about the Slytherin Quidditch team and buying a broom. And Draco's being just a snotty little twerp as per usual. And then Draco's dad said something about how Draco got bad grades and that Draco should be ashamed that Hermione beat him in every exam because she's a Muggle-born. And I think that is a very important thing. I'm very glad that Demi actually wrote that down, because when I was doing my research, I didn't actually, that didn't stick out to me as much. But then you wrote that down. I was like, you're right. Like, this is another instance of him being kind of brainwashed by his family and controlled by his father and taught that Hermione is less than because she is a Muggle-born, and that she shouldn't be getting good grades, and that he should be getting better ones just because of how he was born.
Yeah, I mean, Lucius would never admit to Hermione that he thinks she's smart. Like, that's something he would never do. But to Draco, he's like, listen, this is shameful on our family. I bet he's really scared of his father at this point in time.
It just gives, like, a really odd, like, atmosphere to it. Like, he's always saying, my father this, my father that. Like, he's taking on his dad's beliefs, but at the same time, you don't really see him, like he doesn't act on it, you know what I mean? Like, the way he's bullying, picking on, like, Harry for, you know, not having parents, or Weasley for being poor, Neville for being, like, not as strong or not as rich or whatever. But, like, the fights that he's picking are not the fights that his dad would pick. You know what I mean? Like, his dad is a Death Eater. He's killed people. Yeah. He's done terrible things. And Draco's going around, like, basically preaching his dad's beliefs, but then again, like, he's not doing that himself, which when we get later in the series, when he's in the position to do so, he doesn't. So I think, like, seeing these earlier books and that the way he taunts and bullies characters is, like, lower than his dad, it just shows that in it from the beginning, he doesn't have it in him to, like, be a bad person to the extent that Lucius is.
I agree with you on that one. But what you were saying there actually just made me think, you know, he's always saying, you know, my father this, my father that. And he's always trying to get other people to be afraid of his father. And it makes me wonder why, unless he was afraid of his father himself, you know? So I definitely think that there's some sort of fear there, and that him going around trying to get other people to be afraid of Lucius is his way of kind of showing the world, hey, my dad's a scary guy and I'm terrified of him and you should be too.
Yeah, I never thought of it like that. That's a really good point.
Yeah, that is. I've never thought of it like that either. Like, I mean, Draco's the kind of character that, like, on first read of the books you don't like at all, right? But when you continue reading the books, you're like, there's a lot more to him than you would think. Yeah,
that was totally my experience. Yeah. Like, he was one of my least favorite characters when I started, and now he's definitely in my top 5. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like, the more times that you read the books, watch the movies, whatever, the more you start to empathize with him and feel bad for him. He still did bad things, though.
Yeah, I mean, like, all the bullying, like, you can't excuse that. Like, there's no excuse for literally bullying somebody because their parents are dead, bullying somebody for being poor, bullying somebody, like picking on Hermione, like, that's, like, blood status. That's, like, her race, you know what I mean? Like, that's, like, you don't do stuff like that. That's just wrong. But, like, I think, like, a lot of people, that's what they just focus on. I'm really excited we're having this discussion because a lot of people don't look beyond the stuff he pulls and what's on the surface, and there's more to him, so yeah.
Well, that's almost a perfect transition, because you talked about calling Hermione a slur, and that's actually the next bullet point here on the list. The next time that we see Draco in the Chamber of Secrets, he makes the Slytherin Quidditch team, and on the other hand, he also calls Hermione a mudblood. The Slytherin team decides that they're going to commandeer the field during Gryffindor's practice, and wouldn't you know, Draco's rich father ended up buying the entire Slytherin team new brooms, brand new state-of-the-art brooms that were super expensive, and Hermione had to call him out and was like, nobody on the Gryffindor team bought their way in, and that's when Draco hit her with the mudblood. Everybody freaked out, of course. But I thought it was, I think whenever he's threatened, he kind of hits back with these little, these terrible things. So he felt threatened because, who knows, maybe he did buy his way onto the team. And so he felt like he had to put Hermione down. At least that's my opinion.
Comparing Draco to Harry as a Seeker, to my memory, I do not think that Draco ever beat Harry at a Quidditch match. Harry always caught the assist before him. So I'm not saying that Draco is a bad Seeker. Harry is just fantastic. And we don't see the other Quidditch matches between, Slytherin and Hufflepuff, or like Slytherin and Ravenclaw or whatever. We don't see those to judge his seeking abilities, but just comparing him to Harry, like, Draco got on that team, maybe not just because of his dad's, like, money and buying the brooms, but that definitely did play a role in him getting on the team.
All right. So then, the biggest thing in the Chamber of Secrets, of course, concerning Draco Malfoy, is the whole Heir of Slytherin ordeal. Harry, Ron, and Hermione, once they start seeing the writing on the wall, the clues, the things about the Chamber of Secrets being opened, and the basilisk, and all this kind of stuff, all these hints, they, of course, start to think, well, it's probably Malfoy. Because when the Chamber of Secrets was open the first time, and there was the blood written on the wall that was, enemies of the heir, beware, the Chamber of Secrets has been opened, and Draco said, you'll be next, mudbloods. The trio thinks that Draco is the heir of Slytherin, but because Harry screwed up in the duel with Draco and started speaking in Parseltongue, the rest of the school thinks that Harry is the heir of Slytherin. With Harry, Ron, and Hermione, they end up going to great lengths to prove this. They ended up taking Polyjuice Potion and ended up talking to Draco about it and finding out that he isn't the heir of Slytherin, but also in the conversation that they had with, that Harry and Ron had with Draco, disguised with Polyjuice Potion as Crabbe and Goyle, they learned a lot about who he is as a person. He started trash-talking Mr. Weasley, talking about how much he likes muggles and how he should snap his wand in half and go join them. And he said, you'd never know the Weasleys were purebloods the way they behave. Then he starts smack-talking Dumbledore, saying that Dumbledore's the worst thing that ever happened to Hogwarts. Then he starts talking about how he has no idea who's behind the attacks of the Chamber of Secrets, but that his father was there when the chamber was opened last time. Well, no, sorry, that his father won't tell him anything about when it was opened last time. But it was before his father was there. Apparently he knew all about it. But he says that it was kept quiet and it'll look suspicious if Draco knows too much about it. However, the last time the Chamber of Secrets was opened, a mudblood died, and he hopes it's Granger this time. So I thought that this book really kind of focused a lot on the heir of Slytherin and a lot on speculating if Draco was the heir or not. And I think that it was there was a big emphasis placed on the relationship between Draco and Hermione especially in this book because of the threat against the Mudbloods.
Yeah, like there's a few parts in these books that there's a lot of parts in these books like you can kind of see both sides of a discussion or opinions, but he's literally wishing death on her, and that's like I don't even have words for that. Like he literally wishes that she is going to be the one that's killed simply because she's Muggle-born.
Yeah. There are certain things that characters say, especially the characters that you want to argue that you like, right? But in this scenario, I deeply hate Draco at this point in his career at Hogwarts. Like, there's no excusing. I mean, in our last episode, we talked about the Triwizard Tournament. And Harry had told Cedric about the dragons because he, wanted to make sure that they were on a fair playing field because all the other people knew. And he said in the book that he wouldn't want to wish, someone to be part of this task or to die or to not know about it, even his worst enemies, i.e. Snape and Malfoy. So if Harry wouldn't want to wish something like that on Malfoy, it just shows how different these two characters are.
And this is another instance of words and not actions. Like, Draco would never physically hurt somebody. Like, he would never kill somebody.
That's what I was about to say.
And, like, to see, like, later in the series, which we'll get to later with the whole situation with Dumbledore and Harry at the end, like, at this point, like, he's 12 years old. He's 12 years old, and he has all of these thoughts in his head from his dad. And he's spitting out these words and acting like, all superior and stuff when I don't really think he's sitting back and actually thinking about what's coming out of his mouth. Like, he might be, and through a filter of his dad's thoughts and beliefs in his head, but he personally, I don't think, is, like, putting his own thoughts and mindset into, like, what he's actually saying.
No, I agree with you. I think that, this is a 12-year-old who has been, manipulated and, raised in this kind of way, and this is what he knows. This is his life. These are the people that he hung out with, before he started going to school and got exposed to, different types of people and, more Muggle-borns and things like that. And I think that this is a 12-year-old who hasn't seen the world and is just biased because of his parents and because of the way he was raised. So I wouldn't 100% place the blame on him, but also I'm not going to excuse it in any way, shape, or form either. I just think that it's very reflective of the type of language that was used at home and the type of values that his parents have. But I also think, while he says these things that he wants her to die or whatever, he would never do it himself. He wants someone else to do it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Think of the company he keeps, right? So Crabbe and Goyle are his two good friends, and they are not really that smart, I would say, and they just kind of agree with whatever Draco does because they're like, oh, this guy's cool, we're just going to follow him. And because they're followers and they're not challenging him like Harry and Hermione are, Draco thinks that he's right.
That's a fantastic point.
Yeah, he's got a bunch of yes men.
Yeah, I wonder what would happen if one of the two challenged him. What would the books have been like?
That's a really good idea, actually. Yeah. That's a really good point.
Yeah, I never thought of that. That's a great point.
Because he's constantly surrounded by yes men who never challenge him. Mm-hmm. I don't know, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's super interesting, and that's another instance where, like, no one's keeping him in check. Like you mentioned, like Harry, Ron, and Hermione, they're all different in their own ways. And like their trio is so perfect because they all have strengths and they all have weaknesses. And none of them will hesitate in calling one of the other ones out. Like if someone's doing something stupid, like when Harry and Ron were talking to each other, Hermione straight up told them both, like, you guys are being stupid. Like they would tell each other like how it is and like straighten them out. And Crabbe and Goyle aren't like that. So I do wonder what it'd be like if he had two different best friends. I don't even know if you can call them best friends. They don't really have like a friendship dynamic. But like I wonder what it would be like for him to have friends, like true friends who would actually look out for him and like keep him in check.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, a lot of things are working against him here. His dad is not doing him any favors by just, putting these thoughts in his head of superiority and arrogance, and his friends aren't doing him any favors by just agreeing with whatever's happening.
Yeah. And then he won't allow himself to open up to new friendships because of his biases and his racism or whatever. And so that's preventing him from opening up and exploring new people and new things, and maybe getting rid of his biases in that way too.
First, in Prisoner of Azkaban, we have Harry, Ron, and Hermione in the Hogwarts Express. They have their own compartment, but Professor Lupin is sleeping nearby. And Draco has to swagger in, and this is what he says. "Well, look who it is," said Malfoy in his usual lazy drawl, pulling open the compartment door. "Potty and the Weasel." This makes me laugh, and I know it's not supposed to because it's mean, but, it makes me laugh.
That's so funny. I mean, it's not funny, but it's just, the first time I read that, I'm not gonna lie, I completely just died laughing.
The first real instance that we see Draco, basically what defines the rest of the book, is in Hagrid's first ever Care of Magical Creatures class. They're learning about hippogriffs, and Hagrid says, and I quote, "Don't never insult one, 'cause it might be the last thing ya do." And what does Malfoy do? He insults Buckbeak. So Harry's the first one to, interact with a hippogriff, right? He goes past the fence and he makes eye contact with Buckbeak. He bows, he pets his beak, he flies with him. And Malfoy's like, oh, this can't be too hard, right? So he goes up to Buckbeak and he bows and he's petting his beak. And here's how Malfoy ruins it. "This is very easy," Malfoy drawled, loud enough for Harry to hear him. "I knew it must have been, if Potter could do it. I bet you're not dangerous at all, are you, you great ugly brute?" What does Buckbeak do? He attacks. He lashes out, and there's a gash across Malfoy's arm. He literally cradles his arm, I'm pretty sure that's what the text says, and he's like, I'm gonna die! And Hagrid's like, you're not gonna die! And he takes him to the hospital wing. So that kind of sucks for Hagrid because it was his first lesson and Malfoy had to ruin it. But, Malfoy is just so arrogant. He thinks that things are just gonna work in his favor even if he doesn't pay attention. And this happens. Literally, if he was like Hermione, like we were talking about earlier, and he paid attention, this wouldn't happen. But then again, like I said, it works in his favor because he ruins the lesson. It also works in his favor because he's able to complain to his dad, which we know he loves to do. His dad contacts the school governors, they contact the ministry, and Hagrid has the case for Buckbeak. Doesn't go well. Buckbeak is sentenced to die. And obviously we know that Harry and Hermione rescue him in the end.
Yeah, I think it's kind of ridiculous that the entirety of book 3 is just completely focused on Buckbeak just because Malfoy was once again being a wuss and couldn't handle the truth, to be honest. Couldn't handle, what Hagrid was putting down. Couldn't follow directions. Thought that he was above the law.
I mean, in a sense, maybe he thinks that by insulting Hagrid and by getting Buckbeak executed, he wants to get Hagrid fired. But maybe he's also in a twisted way trying to prove to his father that he's able to act things out and make people just as miserable as his father makes other people.
Ooh, that's a good point. Yeah, I think that could definitely be part of it. Oh, well, I can make other people's lives miserable, too.
The next Malfoy moment in Prisoner of Azkaban comes during potions class, where he's milking his arm injury, like we were saying. Ron has to cut up his daisy roots. Harry has to skin his shrivel fig. Seamus comes by with the paper and is saying that Sirius Black was sighted by a muggle. This part is significant in the books because Malfoy is playing a classic evil villain move. He knows information about Sirius that Harry doesn't know at this point. He knows why Sirius was put in Azkaban and knows his history with Harry's parents. Harry doesn't know this yet. So Malfoy decides to lord this information over him, and he talks to Harry. He says, "Thinking of trying to catch Black single-handed, Potter?" Harry mumbles, "Yeah." Malfoy says, "Of course, if it was me," he said quietly, "I'd have done something before now. I wouldn't be staying in school like a good boy. I'd be out there, looking for him." Basically, he also goes on to say that he would want revenge. Harry is super confused. He's like, revenge for what exactly? Like, what do you know?
I think this is also interesting, too, because, I mean, Malfoy could have just as easily told him and gotten some brownie points with Harry Potter, but he didn't want to. He wanted to be the guy with the information, be the go-between kind of dude. Like, oh, yeah, like, I know all the information, you have no idea what's going on, and I'm not going to tell you. And I don't know, I think that's just another example of him kind of being a jerk. And, like, you know, if you think this guy killed Harry's parents and now he's after Harry, then, or, like, gave up Harry's location, betrayed Harry's location and Harry's parents' location, then why wouldn't you tell him that? Like, this guy could be coming to kill him, you don't know.
Yeah, and this also kind of goes back to, like, the part in Chamber of Secrets where he had information, not a lot, because his dad didn't tell him a lot about the Chamber of Secrets being open, but he knew a little bit about it. This is kind of the same thing because, you know, like, he has information that others don't. And yeah, he told Ron and Harry, but he thought they were Crabbe and Goyle. So again, he knows that he knew somebody died the last time the chamber was open, and he's not telling anybody. So somebody else is basically could die, and he didn't say anything. And this is the same kind of situation here where, like, he thinks he knows the truth, which obviously we know Sirius wasn't what everybody made him out to be, but what Draco believes is the truth does put Harry in danger if it was real, and he doesn't do anything about it.
Draco is instilling confusion, curiosity in Harry, whereas if he had told Harry the truth, Harry would be scared. So he chooses to lord confusion over Harry instead of fear, which I don't know about you, but if I was an evil villain, I would have scared Harry. That would have been my tactic, but it's interesting that he chose the other way around.
Yeah, it could be malicious, or it could be, you know, yeah, I guess I could see maybe where he didn't want Harry to know, and maybe didn't want Harry to be scared. Maybe it's an appeal to his humanity, or maybe it's just him being, you know, mean. Just maybe not evil villain levels of mean, you know? But yeah, if I was in Draco's position, I'd want Harry to be scared. I'd be stopping him in the hallways every 5 seconds saying, "Scared, Potter?"
The rest of Prisoner of Azkaban, well, part of it is full of just tomfoolery and kind of tricks on Harry and Malfoy's part. So first we see him in the Ravenclaw Gryffindor Quidditch match. Cho is one of the Seekers, Harry's the other one, and Harry is literally almost on the snitch, and he sees what he thinks are Dementors at the bottom of the Quidditch field, which reminds him of a previous match when the real Dementors were there. And so he had taken lessons with Lupin to kind of, you know, defend himself. And he actually conjures his first Patronus, which is great if the Dementors would have been real. We find out that the three quote-unquote Dementors at the bottom of the field are Malfoy standing on top of Goyle's shoulders, Crabbe, and Marcus Flint. McGonagall gives them detention, and Lupin is just amused. He's like, "Oh, great job, Harry! You gave Malfoy quite a fright, or quite a scare, basically." And so that was kind of funny. So there's the tomfoolery part, and the other tomfoolery part comes when Harry is under the invisibility cloak next to Ron at the Shrieking Shack in Hogsmeade. So Malfoy comes over, being his swaggering self, and he makes fun of Ron, and he makes fun of Hagrid and his case, and Harry throws mud at him. This would have been awesome and like the best prank of the year if Crabbe hadn't tripped on Harry's leg and pulled down the invisibility cloak and saw his head. Which leads me to my favorite line in the entire book. Maybe Demi can do this later in her Snape voice, but here's what Snape says. Your head is not allowed in Hogsmeade. No part of your body has permission to be in Hogsmeade.
Your head is not allowed in Hogsmeade. No part of your body has permission to be in Hogsmeade.
Your head is not allowed in Hogsmeade. Oh my god, that's iconic. And thanks to Draco Malfoy, we have that iconic quote.
The next part is not so much about Draco as it is about Hermione, but since Draco is involved and it's my favorite part of the book, I have to mention it. So the three are talking to Hagrid about his lost case, and he's really sad. They go back up to the castle, and Malfoy and his cronies overhear. And this is what Malfoy says. Have you ever seen anything quite as pathetic? Said Malfoy. And he's supposed to be our teacher. Slap! Hermione slaps him across the face. She says, Don't you dare call Hagrid pathetic! You foul! You evil! Hermione, said Ron weakly. And he tries to grab her hand as she swung it back. Get off, Ron! Hermione pulled out her wand. And Malfoy, scared as scared could be, runs away. He literally retreats.
This is becoming a pattern.
This is a whole pattern, and I can't believe I've never realized
Scared
it before.
little Malfoy.
Scaredy cat little Malfoy.
Yeah, but he acts like he's the toughest around. It's so funny. He's like, oh, Hagrid's pathetic. Well, I mean, you just got slapped by a girl and you ran away crying, and you're pathetic too.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the last moment in Prisoner of Azkaban when Malfoy holds onto Harry's broom in the last Quidditch match of the season and tries to literally pull Harry away from the snitch. And while it works, and Malfoy does get a head start on a dive toward the snitch, Harry is obviously faster and wins the Quidditch match. Like, this is just something that he does, and he plays dirty. This whole book is literally them playing dirty against one another.
Him pulling on Harry's broom shows the potential for him to be evil. Because, I mean, that's like taking somebody's helmet off in the middle of a football game or something like that. Like, that is some dangerous stuff right there. You know, he could have easily fallen off the broom and hurt himself or died or something. And that is just showing that Malfoy wants to win at whatever cost, and he doesn't care how he does it. And, you know, I don't know if that's related to his father or not, trying to show him up or not. But, I mean, the fact that he was willing to basically dump Harry off of his broom just to win one Quidditch match is kind of excessive.
Chapter 13 of Goblet of Fire, Mad-Eye Moody, and the best transfiguration lesson that we all have seen, which really isn't a lesson, but it's a lesson in not bullying. So that's a lesson. So anyways, so Malfoy sees the Daily Prophet and he has to gloat to Ron about what it says. They talk about Arnold Weasley. First of all, it's Arthur Weasley, and he has no qualms about pointing that out. Mad-Eye Moody is a retired Auror, and he's known to get himself into trouble. So Arthur tries to save him from a spot of trouble. Moody claims that there are, like, crazy dust bins by his house. Basically, Arthur calls the police in to deal with it, and literally there's nothing wrong. And so Arthur has to obliviate a bunch of people, and Rita Skeeter has no problem saying, okay, so this is another Ministry mess up. First, the whole thing at the World Cup with the Dark Mark and the Ministry not taking it seriously, according to her, and now this whole thing with Moody. There's also a picture in the article of Arthur and Molly. Malfoy talks about how heavy Mrs. Weasley is, and he asks Harry about how Harry stayed with them over the summer and if Mrs. Weasley is actually that heavy. Harry says, "You know your mother, Malfoy," said Harry. that expression she's got, like she's got dung under her nose, has she always looked like that? Or was it just because you were with her? And obviously Harry turns away, and Malfoy curses Harry from behind. One, this shows how chicken Malfoy is because he couldn't do it to Harry's face. And two, this is when Moody, aka Barty Crouch Jr., steps in and is like, this is ridiculous. Like, this cannot fly in my school. So he transforms Malfoy into a white ferret. Let's just talk about how rodents are the most disgusting and gross creatures there ever lived to be. And so basically Moody's saying that Malfoy is disgusting and a ferret for what he said and did. So there's that. Then there's the brutality of the punishment where he bounces Malfoy as the ferret up and down against the castle floor, which is also hysterical because before he even bounces him up and down, he sees out of his, like, magical eye Crabbe trying to grab Malfoy the ferret and save him, which is, like, the only, like, interesting thing that Crabbe ever does in his life, and notable, to be honest. And so there's that, and then Malfoy tries to escape, too. So Moody is just, like, he's a tough guy. He knows what he wants done, and he uses everything in his power to get his point across, even brutality, which is hysterical. It's so funny. But unfortunately, Professor McGonagall kind of ruins the fun and tells Moody that he can't do that. It's not allowed. And after that, Chicken Malfoy, or Ferret Malfoy, is scared of Moody. Because when he's talking to Harry later, Hermione goes, "Oh, Professor Moody!" And Malfoy freaks out.
Man, I didn't realize how much of a chicken this guy was until we went into detail on every other thing that we're talking about. It's like, oh yeah, he was a chicken, he ran away. Or he was a chicken, he tried to curse Harry behind his back. Or he was a chicken, he scared of Moody for the rest of his life. Like, you know, he's a scaredy cat. Which makes me think that maybe the actions that he didn't take later on in the series weren't because he didn't, like, want to, but just because that's how he is by nature. He's just scared of everything. Why don't you have your big daddy come in and fight him?
I mean, he puts on a good show of not being scared. Like, until I analyzed this further, like, I didn't think of it that way. He puts on a good show, whereas, like, I will say that other characters, when they're scared, they show it. So, like, for example, Neville is an open book, right? You can tell when he's scared. Whereas, like, if you took the time to analyze Malfoy, that's when you can tell when he's scared.
Yeah, that is interesting. And, like, you do have to kind of dig deep into Malfoy to figure out how scared he is.
Exactly. There is one moment in this book, though, where Malfoy is not scared, which comes to pass when he has a Potter Stinks badge after Harry becomes a champion. He says, "Want one, Granger?" said Malfoy, holding out a badge to Hermione. "I've got loads, but don't touch my hand now. I've just washed it, you see. Don't want a mudblood sliming it up." This is when the duel takes place. So Harry reaches for his wand. Hermione says Harry's name in warning, but Malfoy eggs Harry on. He says, "Go on then, Potter," Malfoy said quietly, drawing out his own wand. "Moody's not here to look after you now. Do it, if you've got the guts." This happens super fast. They both curse at the same time. Harry says Furnunculus. Malfoy says Densagio. Goyle gets hit by Harry's curse and gets the boils across his face. And Hermione's teeth start growing. Again, this makes me not like Malfoy very much because Hermione's teeth are already a little bit bigger. And when Snape comes by to figure out what was going on, he lets Malfoy off the hook, sends Goyle to the hospital wing, and tells Hermione that he doesn't see a difference in her teeth.
This is hands down my least favorite Snape moment in the entire series.
This is a Snape hate zone here. I am not a fan. Never have been, never will be. What, just because he thought your mom was hot? Please. Honestly, like, I don't know if this really reflects on Malfoy, because that was supposed to hit Harry, but I just think that maybe it's more indicative of the culture in the Slytherin house, and, like, how mean Snape might be making his Slytherins as well.
And obviously we don't like Snape because he deducts 50 points from Gryffindor. That's literally his standard, is 50 points. It's not like 10 points, 5 points. Anything that he deems, like, terrible, even though it's also partially Malfoy's fault, it's 50 points. So the next part in the fourth book that is huge, and it dominates the rest of the fourth book, is obviously we know that Malfoy has been in touch with Rita Skeeter, i.e. the unregistered Animagus beetle lady. And he is definitely a part of a lot of these articles that get sent out, especially about people that he doesn't like. He doesn't care that Rita Skeeter and all this is illegal. He just cares that his opinions are being published in the paper. So Hagrid is stuck in his hut. Harry and Hermione and Ron don't know why. They're like, why aren't you here for class? Professor Grubbly Plank is there. While the girls in the class are touching the unicorn that is tethered nearby, Malfoy takes this time to show Harry an article in the Daily Prophet, which talks about how Hagrid isn't fit to be at Hogwarts because he got expelled, because he breeds dangerous magical creatures, i.e. the Scroots, and also because Malfoy and Crabbe got attacked in his class. Malfoy got attacked by a hippogriff, and Crabbe got bitten by a flobberworm, which we all know doesn't have teeth. And Hagrid, of course, is upset. And Rita Skeeter also tells everybody in the article that it's ironic that Harry and Hagrid are friends because the Giants sided with you-know-who. So this whole thing is just another vendetta to tear Hagrid down.
It might be partially because of the Buckbeak incident. Like, Malfoy's pride was hurt, and Hagrid was like, oh, it's a scratch, don't worry about it. And so now, a mix of the racism from Malfoy and a mix of him maybe being a wimp and can't get over the fact that, that Hagrid embarrassed him in front of the whole class.
That's a really good point, too. I didn't think about it that way.
It's like his honor. You've disrespected my honor.
There are 2 more instances with Malfoy and Goblet of Fire. Hermione, Ron, and Harry see him outside a window underneath the tree talking into what they think is a walkie-talkie with Crabbe and Goyle guarding the tree. And Hermione says that that's impossible because walkie-talkies don't work on Hogwarts grounds. They think nothing of it until the next morning, right before the third task, when there is an article published in the Daily Prophet, which Hermione gets and tries to hide from Harry, but obviously he sees it because Malfoy points it out. The article is called Harry Potter, Disturbed and Dangerous. Rita says that Harry has been behaving strangely, which casts doubts on his suitability to compete in the Triwizard Tournament. In last Monday's divination lesson, he stormed out and complained that his scar was hurting. She speculates that his brain was badly affected by Voldemort's attack, and the fact that the scar is still hurting is a sign of his confusion. She says Harry could even be pretending that his scar hurts to get attention. Potter can speak Parseltongue, reveals Draco Malfoy, a Hogwarts 4th year. There were a lot of attacks on students a couple of years ago, and most people thought Potter was behind them, after they saw him lose his temper at a dueling club and set a snake on another boy. It was all hushed up, though. But he's made friends with werewolves and giants, too. We think he'd do anything for a bit of power. Rita says that Parselmouse can be dangerous, and associating with werewolves and giants would mean that Harry has a fondness for violence. She also says that Potter might resort to the dark arts to win the tournament, which, as we know, is far from the truth, and it just makes Harry nervous for his task, and it's just meant to shake his confidence, really. I think this just speaks to Malfoy's character because it is another ploy to get attention. It's another ploy to spread bad news. It's also him allying with Rita, who we know just is basically a character that is meant to shake things up a little bit and stir everything in Malfoy's favor.
I think Malfoy will do anything for a little drop of clout. Just a little bit of fame, just a little bit of something.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think he wants to be famous. I think he wants to be cool. I think he wants to be Harry Potter's friend. Or at least have the inside scoop on Harry Potter, like those trashy magazines.
Yeah, I think he does want a little bit of recognition, and this could also be another reason why he doesn't like Harry at all, is because Harry's famous, he gets all this attention because he made the Dark Lord go away, and Draco's not getting the praise and attention that Harry gets, so it might be a little bit of jealousy too.
Yeah, and Draco thinks that he deserves attention. He deserves the power. Maybe he thinks that it's wasted on Harry because Harry doesn't take advantage of it or do anything with it, whereas Malfoy, we all know, would definitely bask in its glory and do whatever he could to take advantage of it.
Totally.
Oh, yeah.
So next we move on to Order of the Phoenix, and I think out of all the books, this is the one that kind of shows Draco's height of being king of bullying / on top of the world in his mind, in his world, So the first big thing with Draco in Order is after Professor Umbridge, everybody's least favorite character, passes another one of her ridiculous decrees. This one is decree number 24, which basically means that all groups, teams, organizations, clubs, whatever at the school are not allowed to continue until they have the expressed permission from the High Inquisitor. If they form their groups without her permission, they will be expelled. So obviously this includes Quidditch as well. So outside of a potions class, Draco, of course, is going off about how the Slytherin team was given permission to reform right away because my father has influence at the ministry, and then he goes off and says that if it is a question with influence at the ministry, he doesn't think the Gryffindor team is going to be reforming anytime soon because, they've been looking for a reason to sack Arthur Weasley for years, and with Harry and his scar situation, it's only a matter of time before the ministry sends him to St. Mungo's. And then he takes things a little bit too far. So Draco says, apparently, they've got a special ward for people whose brains have been addled by magic. So Neville bolts at him, and Harry and Ron grab him and pull him back, and they're thinking WTF is this? Neville's straight up charging Malfoy, and throughout the whole series up to this point, as we were talking about earlier with Neville, he kind of is not, he appears to be weaker, he holds back a little bit, he gets scared a lot, and for him to literally charge Malfoy here, something must have really hit a nerve, which it obviously did, because we know that Neville's parents are in St. Mungo's because they were tortured into insanity by the Cruciatus Curse by Bellatrix. So this is just taking Draco's, bad bullying tactics to a new level, because first he's bullying the Weasleys for being poor. Then he's bullying Harry because his parents are dead. And now he's literally, taking a shot at, he didn't intend this to be directed at Neville because he was talking at Harry, but making fun of somebody who, this is basically the mental illness for the wizards, being cursed or altered in some way that their mind isn't right because of magic. He's making fun of that, which is just straight up not cool whatsoever. So shout out to Neville for charging him. So obviously Snape, as we've seen before, favors Slytherin, and he comes out and arrives at the class and sees Harry, Ron, and Neville struggling. So obviously he takes 10 points from Gryffindor and doesn't punish Draco in any way for, talking bad about people who struggle mentally in the Wizarding world. So that's just not cool at all.
Not at all. Neville said, forget the snitch, you can catch these hands. Jeez.
Ooh, I like that. I'm sorry, it took a while for me to sink into my brain. That's good. That's a really good burn.
Thank you. I've been thinking that for 10 minutes now.
Next, we see a Quidditch match that just goes completely wrong. So, again, Harry straight up kicks Draco's butt on the broom and catches the snitch before him. But that's not the big significance about this Quidditch match. The big significance about this Quidditch match is that Ron became the Gryffindor keeper. And because he's Draco Malfoy, he wants to do everything in his power to sabotage Ron's keeping abilities during this match. He and the other Slytherins come up with what they think is a fabulous idea to take a shot at songwriting. And they wrote a song called Weasley is Our King. And guess who's going to sing it for you?
Oh, no.
Oh, God, I remember this part.
Here it comes.
Grab my guitar, people.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God. I thought she was just going to acapella it. Oh, geez.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Nope. Got the guitar.
Oh,
Getting
great.
real.
It's serious out here.
Weasley cannot save a thing, he cannot block a single ring. That's what Slytherins all sing, Weasley is our king. Weasley was born in a bin, he always lets the quaffle in. That's what Slytherins all sing, Weasley is our king. Weasley is our king, Weasley is our king. Weasley will make sure we win, Weasley is our king. Okay, so we're gonna have Crash Course 101 on songwriting from Demi Schwartz right now. Alright, first of all, after this whole match, Draco is being a sore loser and says that he wanted to write more verses about Molly and Arthur and basically diss the Weasleys even more. So, he couldn't find words to rhyme with fat and ugly for Molly and loser for Arthur. First of all, songwriting is a form of art. We don't use it to straight up, like, trash somebody. I mean, there are diss tracks, and if you're Taylor Swift, like, go for it. But, you know, Draco doesn't have Swift's, skill here.
He doesn't have what Justin Bieber has.
No, he's not, no.
He wants what Bieber has.
All right.
This is perfect.
Also, he couldn't find a word to rhyme with fat. I'm sorry, but that's that's the easiest word to rhyme with. Like, I can probably name 100 words that rhyme with fat right now. Ugly, how about snuggly? We can rhyme, I don't know how you fit that in his diss track, but snuggly. Loser, cruiser. How about we take Draco off in a police cruiser because he's being a sore loser?
Oh my God, you're so savage.
Oh my God. Don't ever write a bad song. Demi will roast you.
So, in conclusion, I appreciate everybody who takes a shot at songwriting because as an aspiring songwriter, everybody should, give it a try if it's something that they feel they could do. But I'm sorry, Draco, but this is not going to land you a Grammy nomination.
Saying it, Chief.
Oh my God, you're so savage.
So Draco's saying all this stuff. He's trashing the Weasleys and Harry, and obviously Harry and the Weasley twins go after him. And this doesn't turn out good because Harry, Fred, and George get a lifetime ban from Quidditch, which only lasts until Professor Umbridge gets kicked out as, part of the school. So that didn't last very long, but still.
Well, I appreciate your detailed songwriting tips for Malfoy. Hopefully he'll take those into consideration for his next big hit.
I mean, honestly, though, it just goes back to his jealousy of Harry because he has to put someone else down to make him feel better, and the only reason why he gets to put Ron down or decides to maybe is because Harry is more skilled. Also, as A lover of all of the Weasleys, this just makes me angry.
And they also made like crown badges to go along with this. And yeah, so they're all wearing these crown badges that literally have Weasley is our king written on it. Like Draco straight up took this to like he didn't just write a song. He's like, all right, guys, we're going to write a song and we're going to make these badges. And, like we're going to, make Weasley get all anxious and stuff and screw up. Like, oh, I can't.
Draco's the most extra character.
Like, literally, what is his obsession with badges? Because literally, like, 4th book, Potter stinks. This book, he's got these crown badges.
Wasn't there another badge that he had at one point, too? I feel like there was another one. I don't know. I can't think of it, but, like, yeah.
Didn't he have a prefect badge?
Yes. Yeah, he was just prepping to be a prefect. I said he should just get a badge that says, I'm a hater, and leave it at that.
Alright. So, also, to fuel Draco's big ego, he becomes a member of the Inquisitorial Squad, which is a select group of students who support the ministry who are handpicked by Professor Umbridge. So right there, this Inquisitorial Squad is up to no good. So the first time that he kind of steps into a role as one of Professor Umbridge's pets, it was when the DA was, practicing behind her back, and she obviously wanted to know, like, what was happening. Draco also wanted to know what Harry was up to. So he's the one who, grabs Harry by the ankles when he's trying to run away and thinks that he succeeded when really that basically didn't do anything because Harry didn't get punished for this. Then the next time is, I think this is just like an insane part of the book. So Harry, Ron, Hermione, and Ernie Macmillan of Hufflepuff are just like chilling, and they're bad mouthing Professor Umbridge, and Draco walks by and starts deducting points from them, and Ernie's like, dude, like, prefects cannot deduct points, and Draco's pretty much like, watch me do it. And so, like, the members of the Inquisitorial Squad have the ability to deduct points. So this is what he does. He takes 5 points from Hermione because she was talking bad about their new head mistress. He took 5 points from Ernie for contradicting him when he said, prefects can't take points. He takes 5 points from Harry just because he doesn't like him. He takes 5 points from Ron because his shirt's untucked. And then he takes 10 more points from Hermione because she's a mudblood. So that's just ridiculous.
His shirt is untucked?
Yeah, he took points from Ron because his shirt was untucked.
He's so petty.
Your shirt's untucked! 5 points! 5 points!
He took 10 points from Hermione for just being born the wrong way.
Yeah.
It's just for him to be like, look at me, I'm a prefect, I can do what I want. Yeah, it's a power trip.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about power earlier, and how if he had power, he would definitely flaunt it, and here he is flaunting it.
Yeah, flaunting and abusing it, using it in the wrong ways. Yeah. He could easily be trying to find people who are actually breaking rules instead of, taking 5 points from Ron because his shirt's untucked.
Draco's whole Inquisitorial Squad phase ends in a fantastic way because when Harry wants to sneak into Umbridge's office and go into her fireplace to make sure, check to see if Sirius is at Grimmauld Place, the Inquisitorial Squad is basically the ones who catch Luna, Neville, Ron, Hermione, and Ginny, and they're holding them ransom in Umbridge's office. But when Harry and Hermione trick Umbridge into going into the Forbidden Forest so the centaurs can take her away, Ginny straight up kicks Malfoy's butt and hits him with the Bat Bogey Hex, and that's the end of Draco's Inquisitorial Squad career. So shout out to Ginny again for being the coolest.
It's iconic. And her hexes, I've heard, are fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Alright, so the last part in Order of the Phoenix is after the battle of the Department of Mysteries, and Harry, Draco, Crabbe, and Goyle cross paths in the entrance hall. And one of the best conversations in the entire series happens right here. So because Lucius failed to get the prophecy at the Ministry and basically screwed up big time, Voldemort's not too happy with them, and Draco had something to say about this. So Draco says, I'm going to make you pay for what you've done to my father. And Harry had the best reply in all history. Well, I'm terrified now. I suppose Voldemort's just a warm-up act compared to you three. So at this point, Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle, flinch or whatever because he said, you know whose name? And then Harry keeps going. What's the matter? He's your dad's mate, isn't he? Not scared of him, are you? Love it. And then it gets even better because they go back and forth about, Harry landing Draco's father in Azkaban. And then they start to pull out their wands, and then Snape walks up. And he's basically like, what are you doing, Potter? In his usual attitude. And then Harry says, I'm trying to decide what curse to use on Malfoy, sir.
Absolute legend. Sir. There's no need to call me Professor, sir. That gets me every time.
So then Snape, doesn't find this cool, so he thinks he's going to take points away from Gryffindor, but the hourglass that holds the Gryffindor rubies is empty because of all the points that Draco deducted as a member of the Inquisitorial Squad and the other wrongdoings of the Gryffindors, I guess, which we didn't see on the page, but I'm pretty sure Snape took 99% of those points away. But anyway, at this moment, the boss that she is, McGonagall marches through the front doors and awards 50 points each to Harry, Ron, Hermione, Ginny, Neville, and Luna for alerting everybody of the Dark Lord's return. And then, just to show Snape who's the sass queen, she takes the points away that Snape wanted to take away from Harry.
Absolute boss. She really is an icon. We have to stand.
Yeah, totally.
But I wish that Harry had actually cursed Draco at that point. He really deserved it.
So this leads us into Half-Blood Prince, and I feel that this is the book where we really see Draco kind of start to change. So because of the situation at the Ministry and basically Lucius disgracing Voldemort and everything, Voldemort is punishing Draco by making him kill Dumbledore. He's giving him the task to kill Dumbledore, and Voldemort doesn't intend Draco to succeed. And ultimately, he's doing this as another punishment to Lucius, because if Draco fails to kill Dumbledore, the price is his life. He's gonna kill Draco. So at first, Draco takes on this responsibility with a sense of purpose. All of these years, he has idolized Lucius, and he knows that Lucius doesn't like Dumbledore at all. And because his father doesn't like Dumbledore, Draco finds it in him to believe that if his dad didn't like him, then the world would be a better place without him. So that's the mindset he has going into this, which is classic Draco Malfoy, following what his dad thinks. So at the beginning of the book, when Harry is in Madame Malkin's, he sees Draco kind of pull his arm away, and it gets suspicious that he might have been branded with the Dark Mark. And then later, when the trio follows him into Nocturne Alley, they use extendable ears to hear what Draco is telling Borgin and Burks. And he's basically saying, he needs help mending something. And Borgin's telling him to bring it in, and Draco's like, it has to stay put. And he's talking about the vanishing cabinet in Hogwarts. And then he shows him something on his arm, and Borgin gets all freaked out when Draco shows him his arm. And again, Harry gets suspicious that this is the Dark Mark. And then also on the Hogwarts Express on the way to school, Harry sneaks into Draco's compartment and hears him tell other Slytherins that, he might not be at Hogwarts next year because he might have moved on to bigger and better things. So this whole beginning is setting it up that Draco's up to something, Harry knows he's up to something, and Draco truly believes that he can succeed. But he learns very quickly that it's much harder than he thought. His first two attempts to kill Dumbledore go badly wrong, And this is the first instance of when Katie Bell gets cursed with the necklace. And the second one is when the poisoned mead that was intended for Dumbledore, Slughorn gives Ron on his birthday. It gets really difficult for him because we see later at Slughorn's Christmas party, Draco obviously isn't invited, and he's caught by Filch sneaking in outside, the corridor by the classroom where the party's taking place. And he drags him in, and Harry notes that Draco has dark circles under his eyes and he has a grayish tinge to his skin. So this is really taking a toll on him. And then it shows even more when Harry walks in on Draco in the bathroom when he's crying and saying that he can't do it. If he doesn't do it, Voldemort's going to kill him. And this is when that big duel happens. Draco catches Harry looking at him and they start to duel each other. Draco tries to hit him with Crucio, but Harry is quicker and uses a Half-Blood Prince's spell, Sectum Sempra, which is described as being slashed with an invisible sword. Draco's basically bleeding from his chest and he has slash marks on him. And if Snape didn't get there in time to do the counter curse, then he might have died. And this is like a major turning point because you see Draco's weakness, like he's literally crying actual tears, like he's scared in this moment, and he tries to hit Harry with an unforgivable curse, and in return he's hit with the spell. Harry didn't know what the spell did, and I don't really think either one of them should be excused for their actions because unforgivable curses, you get a lifetime sentence in Azkaban if you use it on somebody, and Draco's trying to curse him with Crucio, and Harry hits him with this spell that could have killed him. So this is just a very dark part of the book.
Well, first of all, this is the only time that I really started to respect Snape. This book was a turning point for me and Snape especially. And I think that if Harry had ended up permanently injuring Malfoy or killing him or something, then that wouldn't have been the ending that he would have wanted or that Draco would have deserved. You know what I mean? I feel like Harry pulled out that curse because he was just curious to know what it was. He didn't know what it meant, what it did. But the fact that Malfoy tried to hit him back with an unforgivable curse, I think that's a big sign of him definitely starting to solidify in his dark path. Usually he would just throw normal curses and stuff, never an unforgivable. I don't think we've ever seen him throw one of those until this very moment. So I don't know. I think it's a bad look on both Harry and Malfoy.
Yeah, and Harry did that in defense, but like you said, he didn't know what that spell did, and I think this is where this scene shows a big difference between both of them, because when Harry's talking to Hermione later, he literally tells her, if I would have known what that spell did, I would have never used it. He would never do that to anybody, whereas Draco here is using an unforgivable curse knowing full well what it does. And I agree that this is him tapping into the dark arts, but at the same time you see his weakness here too, because he's terrified for his life because he was basically given an impossible task. So this is where you start to see him being hesitant while also tapping into the dark arts, which I think is important to note, both sides of this, because from this point forward, we do see a shift in him. And I think this is the part where you see, where he's kind of becoming unhinged a little bit and starting to, not really, starting to question things and starting to, really take in what is happening. Because up to this point, it's been an easy life for him. He's always gotten what he wanted. He's never been put in this serious danger and stuff. But now that he's been given this task, it's the first time where he's truly being forced into doing something evil. And it's just interesting to see how he's handling that.
I think it's the first time that this has really been made real for him too. Yeah. You can actually see that he doesn't want to do this thing. Where, he might brag about it if his dad had to do it or something. You know what I mean? My dad had to kill Dumbledore. But now that he's the one who has to do it, suddenly the consequences are on him.
Yeah, and it's taking a physical toll, too. We saw earlier how, he's being ill because of it. Like, it's not just like, oh, I might not be able to do it. It's like he's physically, like, it's draining his energy, and like you really see him crack under this weight because, you know, at the end of this book, he does succeed, and he lets the Death Eaters into the castle through the mended vanishing cabinet in the room of requirement. And then he is face to face with Dumbledore. He disarms him with his Expelliarmus, and he freezes. Dumbledore basically says, you know, like, I'm not armed. Like, you can kill me. Like, I'm weak and I don't have a wand. Like, I'm at your mercy. And Draco keeps saying, I have to kill you. And Dumbledore's like, you're not a killer. And Draco's like, well, I have to. And then Dumbledore's like, well, if you were going to kill me, you would have done it the second you disarmed me. And then this is when Draco cracks, and he basically says, like, I have to, or else Voldemort's going to kill me and my entire family. So I think this is very important because it's easy to overlook the fact that he included his family in what he said, that he wasn't only afraid for his life, but his family's too. And this just shows, like, that he does care. And even though this is, like, a very brief, fast thing that he says, like, he's worried about his mom, and his dad's in Azkaban, and when he gets out, he's worried that he's going to be in danger. And Dumbledore said that he knew of the task, but he didn't say anything because if Voldemort found out that Dumbledore knew, Draco would have been murdered. And he tells him, come over to the right side, Draco, you're not a killer. And he's basically telling Draco, like, come over to our side, I'll protect you, I'll protect your whole family, and you won't have to do this. And obviously at this point, the other Death Eaters show up, and Snape kills Dumbledore. But I think it's very important to note here that Dumbledore spent the last moments of his life being caring toward Draco. And I think this, of all things, is huge because when we move on to Deathly Hallows, this instance, this situation with Dumbledore here, like, really sunk in with Draco, and I think it started to root a change in him.
If Draco had paid a little bit more attention to Dumbledore's time at Hogwarts and kind of to the things that Dumbledore did, and maybe looked up to him more as a role model, maybe he wouldn't be caught in this bind. There are more important things than being part of the dark side.
Exactly. And moving on to Deathly Hallows, there's only 2 major instances with Draco in this book. And the first one is after Harry, Ron, and Hermione get captured by the Snatchers, they're brought to Malfoy Manor. And Lucius and Narcissa are asking Draco, is that Potter and his friends? Like, is that Harry Potter? Do we get Harry Potter? Like, do we call the Dark Lord? And Draco will not easily give him up. And then at the end of this book, Draco tries one more time, I think, to kind of restore his family's reputation by going into the room of requirement after Harry and telling him that, you know, we're going to take you to Voldemort and stuff. If the whole Fiend Fire thing didn't happen, I really do not think that Draco would have dragged Harry to Voldemort and would have been like, here you go. Like, he wouldn't have done it. He wasn't able to kill Dumbledore. He wouldn't have sold Harry like that. He just didn't have it in him. And I feel like, so that's another situation where somebody who he was taught to hate by his dad, you know, his dad hated Dumbledore, he didn't like Harry. Draco was raised to dislike Dumbledore and not like Harry. So the 2 people who he was taught to hate the most were, you know, Dumbledore spending the last moments of his life saying, I could have protected you if you want that, like, I can help you. And Harry literally saved his life. In Cursed Child, we do see that, you know, Draco has Scorpius, his son, and can I just say real quick that Scorpius is incredible. He's such a kind person. He's funny. He's a great friend to Albus and everything. And it's very clear in this play that Draco is the father to Scorpius that Lucius wasn't to him. Like, Draco cares about Scorpius so much, and when Scorpius and Albus are in trouble and trapped back in time and everything, Draco and Harry join forces to, you know, go and help them. And I think above everything that shows Draco's kind of transformation and that he learned from his family's mistakes is the fact that he raised a son that was completely different than how he was at school. Because if he wouldn't have learned from the mistakes, Scorpius would have turned out the way he did. And I think it's very interesting that, in the play, how Draco is so bothered that there's these rumors that his son is the son of Voldemort, and Scorpius is basically targeted for that. And it's very interesting that this bothers Draco so much, because in his time at school, he was the bully. And now that his son's being bullied, it bothers him. So it's very clear that, his whole transformation across these 7 books through to the play, it shows how he started off like idolizing his father and what he stood for, but then he realized that, what his family stood for wasn't exactly the right thing. And he learned from his parents' mistakes, and he was able to take a step back and reevaluate everything. And I'm not saying that how he ended up in the end cancels out all the things that he did, because he did terrible things, but he did learn and he grew from it. And I think that's what makes him such an amazing character, because I love characters that have these great character arcs. And all of JK's characters have these character arcs, but Draco's, I think, is one of the biggest out of them all. And I think that's why I love his character so much, not because of necessarily what he does and who he is, but just to see how he changed from book 1 to the end. Like, he's a completely different person.
I agree 100% with you. I think he had the potential to be the exact opposite of what he turned out to be. He had the potential to be his dad, because that's all he knew, and I think with the help of the people around him, Harry extending some kindness to him, even Dumbledore extending some kindness, just some people, seeing him as a person and not just as maybe a future Death Eater or a Slytherin or Lucius Malfoy's son or something like that, but people like Harry, like Dumbledore, actually seeing him and understanding him.
Yeah, and I also think it's important to say that the time where he was making these shifts in his own beliefs and challenging his father and what he stood for, he was like 16, 17 years old. So if we think about us and like kids today, like growing up, they grow up with their parents' influences, but once they hit a certain age, like around adulthood, like that's when they start to form their own beliefs. And I think Draco's a great character that represents that, because in Half-Blood Prince, that's when he's 16. And that's when he starts to change. And I think that's a very realistic representation of what would happen to somebody in a situation like that. So I love how JK made him not just the bully and the one that Harry couldn't stand, but somebody who we can empathize with, because he represents like something that we can recognize in our lives.
Everybody has a story, and everybody's lives turn out different from one another, but it's also important to realize that sometimes the antagonist isn't as evil as you think that they will be in the end.
I agree with you on that one too. I think between Draco and, even Snape and some of these other characters that we were introduced to, and they seemed to be kind of an unsavory kind of character at first, and then eventually, they redeem themselves somehow. And I think that that's just really an important thing that we can take away from all of this, but especially with Draco, that you aren't doomed to be the person that, everybody thinks you are, or everybody might assume you might grow up to be. You can change, you can grow. You aren't stuck with the same beliefs that you had when you were 16. You can evolve as a person and learn and grow, and I think that that's important, that in these books, we were shown that we were, kids especially, because we all picked these up when we were, 10 years old. Kids especially, I think it's important for them to realize that everything isn't, as it seems, and sometimes you can change your opinion and that's okay, and you can change as a person and that's okay. You're not always stuck being the bully.
Yeah, and on that note, that was a fabulous way to end our discussion about our young Slytherin friend Draco. And so we hope that you enjoyed our discussion. Anissa, how did you like being on?
It was great. It was great talking to you guys, and it was really nice to meet you, Jess.
Yeah, you too.
I really had a good time. Yeah, I thank you for having me on and having a good discussion. I think we really got into the nitty-gritty of what makes Draco Malfoy the way he is.
Yeah, we definitely did. Thanks so much for being on. Our next episode comes out on June 19th. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
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 Thank you for coming back to Hogwarts with us in this episode of Lumos Maxima, the Rolling Library podcast. Hedwig's theme and Leaving Hogwarts in this episode were originally composed by John Williams and arranged by your favorite Hufflepuff. Until next time, 3, 2, 1, Knox.